big is his hole?
The average age is 49 years old. Okay, Boomer.
Young and the vibrant versus the old and the boring.
Yes, well indeed. Welcome to another half hour of The Whip. And tonight, Labour's lack of ideas wearing thin. And what is next for TVNZ as relations with the government hits a new low? And that issue around Maiki Sherman. And the government still defending barbs at the $40 million events package that will bring the likes of Robbie Williams as a slush fund. And should the mayor get the best office in the building? With me this evening, Holly Bennett, founder of the Uffy Group lobbying firm and former advisor to Paul Goldsmith. Holly, kia ora, great to have you on the show.
Kia ora.
And we have Jonathan Milne, Newsroom Pro managing editor. Jonathan, welcome.
Good evening.
And Jonathan, Holly joined by former New Zealand First MP, former Minister Tracey Martin. Kia ora, Tracey, very good to have you here on the show.
Kia ora, Wallace.
But first, the Whip quiz question. Now, this is for the listeners. What party made headlines at the 2002 conference by doing a certain type of dance to this style of music? There you go. So what, yes indeed, Holly's looking perplexed there. What was the style of music and what was the party? 2101. It was at a conference in 2002.
And
right.
Can Louise Upston get that music here?
Well, that's a supplementary question, isn't it? All right, now, it has been an explosive few days for TVNZ, between TVNZ and government ministers. TVNZ Political Editor Maiki Sherman is under fire for allegedly using a homophobic slur against another reporter at pre-budget drinks in Nicola Willis's office. And this off the back of complaints that TVNZ journalists banged on the office door of National Party whip Stuart Smith when he refused to speak to them. And let's not forget the Prime Minister pulling out of his weekly breakfast interviews. So just how frosty will the TVNZ government connection get? So a multi-pronged issue this, but people are talking about it. Let's start with the Maiki Sherman situation and the language she's been accused of using. I'll start with you, Jonathan, because you are in journalism. How do you see this issue? What's your big question? My question, or many questions, why now?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair one, and that's also the criticism that's been levelled against the media by Annie O'Brien, the blogger who originally brought it to light. She's saying, well, why has, in her view, the media covered this up? Speaking very defensively for myself, didn't know about it until yesterday. And I think most of us probably would have felt obliged to cover it, especially those of us in the independent media. We do feel that we have a certain role as a watchdog on the big media, like RNZ.
Yeah.
So I think most media would feel that it's a legitimate story. There are questions that have to be asked.
Do you think Maiki Sherman will stay?
Look, I was interested in the statement on TV1 yesterday on their own clip, where they said we can't comment on an employment matter, which implies that there is an employment matter, and there has to be, doesn't there? Will it be terminal for her? I kind of hope not. We all make mistakes. By gosh, I've made a few.
We all make mistakes. Tracey Martin, I mean, this has been big in the last couple of days. What do you make of this story?
Well, there's a good reason why the media didn't know about this, and that's because the other person involved didn't want them to. And, I mean, when does the victim of something get to decide when their information will go public? This has not been done with their permission. That person's now being dragged through the media in the same way that Maiki is, without their permission. So, one, it's a long time afterwards. Two, there is a process, and Minister Willis could have actually gone and complained to the Speaker herself. She could have explained that to the victim if this is what happened and said, I'm sorry, but I have to go and see the Speaker and raise it. That would have been the right way to do it. Then it could have been dealt with. But right now we've got two people who've lost control of what is their story.
What do you reckon, Holly?
So as a self-proclaimed hothead, one thing that strikes me about Maiki is she's definitely not. And looking at this, I want to understand what was said to have her have that reaction. And it goes to the heart of what Tracey is saying. There's two people involved in this, and it has been done to them. And I wonder what was said in that room to elicit that response. It doesn't make the response acceptable, what she said, not at all. But there's something else that happened.
Here's another way of looking at it. I mean, it's alleged, but who would say those words? Why would they even come to you, Jonathan?
I think I don't entirely agree with Tracey and Holly on this because, yes, there's two people. Yes, it's their story, but they are public figures. And if a politician had said that word and used that language in a room, even in a casual sort of drinkies off the record, then we would be reporting it, and we would be reporting it very hard, and we would potentially be expecting their head to roll. And I do think that the political editor of One News is one of the biggest roles in reporting in this country. So both Lloyd Burr and Maiki are, in prominent positions, so they do have to be accountable.
But she's not an elected representative.
No, I mean, I totally disagree. And I wonder whether the rest of the media knows that. And does it apply to all media or just the public broadcasting media?
Jonathan?
I've made a rod from my own back now, haven't I?
Yeah, that's right, Jonathan. I hope we all know where you were drinking last week.
Well, fair point. You want to answer that?
I was tipping coffee around an RNZ studio last week, I think.
I heard about it. Yeah, I mean, this is what Richard Harman says, Holly. This is his view. I think there's been a bit of a beat up of Maiki going on. Anyone who's worked in the press gallery knows that there's often, not just among journalists, but among other people working in Parliament, incidents, if we want to put it that way. They have no political importance at all. If I insult somebody at a private party in Parliament, then it's got nothing to do with my journalism or that person's political performance. Now, he also says this: I rate Sherman as a political reporter, and I do wonder whether the scrutiny would be as intense as it if she were white, intense as it is if she were a white male.
This is why I want to understand what was said to elicit the response, because she does not strike me in any way as the kind of person who goes out of her way to offend people in that manner. And so there has to be something else here.
Yeah. And I would also say, what was the story she was leading last week?
Well, let's come to that, shall we? I mean, the story, looking more broadly at the string of recent frosty interactions between government leaders and TVNZ, the complaints of aggression towards Stuart Smith from Maiki Sherman. She denies that. Luxon pulling out of the breakfast slot. This whole swathe of TVNZ stories around the panel. Is this just coincidence, or is it representing something a little bit bigger? Jonathan, what's your spidey sense?
Look, I don't think it's any secret that National Caucus had a discussion a few weeks back and said we're going to push back hard against the media. It's election year. We're not entirely happy. They had some legitimate concerns about some of One News's reporting on crime stats. So they said we're going to push back very hard. I also know from bitter personal experience that in an election year, the media can be a pretty good bête noire for politicians who are looking for a distraction. I was involved in the Cuppergate so-called scandal, affair, whatever you want to call it.
John Banks, the cup of tea.
And the cup of tea and the recording, which ended up in my hands. And it got really messy. And not entirely unlike One News chasing Stuart Smith around the corridors of Parliament. We never actually published the contents of that recording, but you wouldn't know from history, would you? Similarly, One News never actually reported anything from this alleged recording of Stuart Smith around the corridors of Parliament. But John Key and Stephen Joyce back in 2011 turned that into quite a big story about tabloid media intrusion. It was some quite, in my view, outrageous suggestions that next thing Sunday papers would be putting mics, bugging people's homes and bugging people's marital arguments, and then children would take their own lives when they were played on air. No. It was some quite ludicrous stuff was said. And I see the same happen again, where the government has recognised that maybe we can distract people by turning the media into the targets.
There's been a lot of feedback on this on the text 2101. Don't forget you can watch this as well because we cut this up. But a quick response from Tracey and Holly around the relations between the government and TVNZ. Is there something bigger here, Tracey, or not? Is it just a coincidence? Is there something else?
Well, one, I don't know, but let's not forget, first of all, the chasing of Andrew Little to try and do Angry Andy during an election campaign. So it's been done a lot, right? And the second thing I would say, which Winston Peters says often, is you're not obliged to give the media interviews. So the Prime Minister can withdraw from whatever interview he wants to withdraw from. He just has to manage the consequence from the general public there. But the timing, 1 year later, when the two individuals involved did not ask for this to happen, seems very strange.
Holly.
Quite frankly, if you are afraid of the media, don't get into politics. That has to be the takeaway, because I remember a time when I worked in the Beehive, a News Talk ZB broadcaster, Vox Pop's my minister, in an off-bounds part of the Beehive. We didn't complain. There wasn't any moaning. There was no complaints. The minister I worked for at the time just got on with it. And so when you're looking at this stuff, I do think, why are you being so precious about the Fourth Estate? Get on with it. That the media is there for a reason. Just get on with it.
Interesting stuff. Right, Holly Bennett, Jonathan Milne, and Tracey Martin. Big response to this. Now, that was Scottish country dancing music. No, it wasn't. We'll come to that very soon. Now, as the election creeps closer, the Labour Party's policy list is looking a little bit threadbare. Leader Chris Hipkins insists all will be revealed after the budget in May, but journalists like Morning Report's John Campbell are not convinced.
New Zealanders have seen enough of this government to know that they're not delivering on the promises that they made them. They haven't fixed the cost of living, haven't fixed the economy, haven't got Kiwis back to work, and they don't have a plan to move the country forward.
What's your
Labour
plan?
does have a plan.
Does it?
So is the Labour Party performing a disappearing act by lack of policy, as the spin-offs Hayden Donnell put it? Tracey, let's start with you. What did you have in 2023, National had launched its income tax policy, family boost, childcare, renewable electricity generation policy. At this point in time, 2017, you had Labour. They announced Kiwi Build, healthy homes, intended expansion of the Reserve Bank's mandate. Compared to now, it's all a bit thin-lipped, perhaps, if you could say. I mean, what do you think, Tracey?
Well, when I look at it, what I see is an opposition party saying, let's not get in the way of a government that's actually causing its own downfall. So if you look at the polls, apart from New Zealand First, why would you get in the way? And if you think about what you just said, 2023, 2017, look at the way the government that was in power was performing, and so therefore you needed to outdo them from a policy perspective. I have no insider knowledge about whether Labor's got policy or not, but right now there's a lot of water to go under a bridge, and I'm not sure that I would be getting in the way of the current government.
Holly?
So one of the things that we do in my firm is track what the policy announcements are. And I thought this would be a fun fact to see whether or not the panel knows what the most developed area of election policy is so far. If you want to take any guesses.
Across the board or just Labour?
No, across the board.
Jonathan?
I don't know. Road building or non-road building?
Infrastructure.
Okay, good guess. Tracey?
Yeah, I'd say agriculture or infrastructure.
It's energy and resources.
Okay.
Right.
That's where you're seeing the most policy. So
Who's it coming out from?
It's come from New Zealand First.
Yeah, there you go.
Green and Top. And so I think actually what you're seeing is indicative of this sort of moderate middle, which is where National and Labour tend to get some their votes from, where then they're refusing to move into the space too early because they want to keep their powder dry closer they get to the election.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Jonathan?
Just yesterday, actually, we carried an interview with Ginny Anderson, the Labour education spokesperson, who gave us a very full rundown of what they're planning for school education. I think she's trying to walk it back a little bit today, but they want to bring back restore school lunches as they were, which to me means doubling the cost of them again. They want to reinstate the obligation for school boards to pay heed to the treaty. They want to get rid of the hour a day of mandatory reading, writing and arithmetic. So, I mean, it sounds to me like some pretty firm policy. The trouble is, almost as soon as they said it, they started regretting it and said, oh, well, it's kind of what we believe. Yeah. It's what we believe, but we wouldn't actually commit to actually putting it in writing in a manifesto yet. So, I'm just wondering. It's time. It's time that they have to start coming out with some firm policy now. They can't leave it any later.
They cannot leave it any later. Tracey Martin.
Well, I mean, I was just talking to New Zealand First the other day. They haven't put their manifesto together yet. So I'm not sure it is time. I mean, I'm not sure it's time. Parties are still working through from their remits, that means their conferences are in June, July. The House is not going to rise till the 24th of September. It's a 6-week campaign. You don't want to give the government, who's got all of the numbers and all of the data, enough time to actually counter what is your policy, right? So I'm not sure it's time.
I thought the big news element in that, Tracey, was that you're still talking with New Zealand First.
I talk with everybody, Jonathan. I'm a friendly person. I'm a friendly person.
Oh, indeed. All right, now we have Jonathan Milne, Tracey Martin, Holly Bennett on the whip this evening. There is a huge amount of feedback coming through on text on that first story, 2101. But let's go to our quiz, shall we? Again, so what party made headlines at the 2002 conference by doing a certain type of dance to this style of music? All right, so the question was, what was the party and what was the dance style? And with us from Tokoroa, we have Alan on the web. Alan, how are you?
Ka pai, Wallace, ka pai, kia ora.
Kia ora. All right, now, so let's take your mind back to 2002. Firstly, who was the party?
Was the Green Party?
Yes. And what style of music?
Well, it was English folk dancing, Morris dancing.
That's the one. It was Morris dancing. It made the headlines, didn't it, when the Morris dancers infiltrated the Greens in 2002?
Well, they're absolutely ridiculed, but my recollection is that Rob Donald was part of those who were doing the dancing, and I was reflecting on it, waiting to speak to you, and he was such a great guy. He would have fitted in, and he would have fitted, well, more than fitted in, of course, but he would have led it.
Yeah, fair enough. Alan, nice to have you on, and correct. They were the Green Party and the Morris dancers. Good on you.
You're welcome, Wallace. Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Can you recall that, Jonathan? Can you recall that? It was a long time ago.
I think the Greens have been playing that one down ever since.
Yes,
I mean,
very much so.
Every election year they go into their conference saying, please, no Morris dancing.
No Morris dancing, that's right. All right. Now, rail all the way, baby. That's Winston Peters' message to his coalition colleagues as they look to loosen restrictions on heavy vehicles. More weight might soon be allowed on trucks to save diesel, but Winston Peters says the truck lobby is just using the fuel crisis as an excuse to scrap rules they don't quite like. Now, I know that RNZ listeners are very fond of their rail stories. We thought we'd bring this in. Jonathan Milne, you wrote on this. What's your opinion? Is this just the truck lobby getting their way, or is this a legitimate way to ease pressure on diesel?
Well, first, I'd like to request that for the rest of the election year that you have a train of the day every night on the show.
Not a bad idea.
Different type of engine. For the train spotters like me out there.
I'll refer up. I'll see what Paul Thompson thinks. What's your take on this?
I'm not an engineer of any description, but it always bemuses me that the sort of absolute faith conviction of the train spotters that trains are so much more efficient than any other kind of transport. Ultimately, they're running big diesel engines up and down the country. They're carrying the same weight. Physics tells me the difference is going to be not that big. So then you've got the additional complication of all the offloading and unloading at either end. I mean, we've got a big inland port near where I live in Onehunga. All the time and energy and human resource and carbon emissions that go into offloading the containers off the trains onto the trucks, back onto the trains, onto the trucks. That's all got to add up. So I'm just not sure it's the miracle solution that the train spotters believe.
Okay. Nonetheless, it's quite good politics, Tracey Martin, because one thing we do know is that there is a real fondness, whether it's harking back to the days gone, but New Zealanders, as a rule, are very fond of rail.
Yeah, no, they are. And I mean, like on one level, it makes sense to me, to be perfectly frank. And we used to have an efficient rail system and New Zealanders miss it, right? But the other consideration that government has to consider when they're talking about we'll take trucks off the road is ruck. So there's an amount of money that comes from the transport sector just in taxes road user charges and so on and so forth, that if you shift them onto rail, then that income's gone. So there's other things to consider apart from the fact that we'd all love to not be following logging trucks.
Good political analysis there. Invest in rail.
Well, I think when we think about what we're looking at here, Jonathan called it a bailout in his article, and I did say this prior to the show. I didn't like that terminology because I actually think it's relatively unfair for what's happening when these things that they're having to deal with are not as a result of their own actions. I do think we're on the precipice of supply chain devastation, and actually rail and airlines are just the first cab off the rank for more destruction that we're going to see as a result of this Middle East war.
And I can tell you that I talked to Dean Kimpton last week. He's just a couple of days away from, I think he finishes up as Chief Executive of Auckland Transport on Friday this week. So he was very helpful and open his interview. Nothing to lose, I guess. He says that they're in talks with and other bus operators around the country. I mean, bear in mind, Auckland Transport probably runs the biggest fleet of diesel buses in the country, and they're in talks with government about some kind of bailout for the buses as well, some kind of subsidy to. I'm sorry, no, you don't like the phrase, Holly. Sorry, Holly. But they're talking about some kind of bailout because they can't afford to keep these things on the road when they're losing ever more money by the week.
Gosh, all right. It is 7 away from 8. You are with the Whip, with Holly Bennett, Jonathan Milne and Tracey Martin. Now to this. The ACT Party is coming for the events attraction package. That's the $40 million policy paying for this man to come to New Zealand. That's right. That is Robbie Williams, Lincoln Park and the Tottenham Hotspurs too. They're bordering relegation, by the way. But ACT MP Todd Stevenson is calling the personal slush fund for Tourism Minister Louise Upston. Holly Benefit, rather. Sorry, gosh. What's
going on today, guys?
Let's get Holly's name right tonight.
I'm sorry too.
Look, has this fund backfired majorly?
Well,
we keep on talking about it.
Why are people so upset? What genuinely, as somebody who, I'll caveat this with that I represented Restaurant Association of New Zealand for 6-7 years, what advantage, what payout, what support does hospitality get from the government? Where is the things that they are getting year on year? Unlike the farmers and other big sectors. We're talking about $40 million here, and the way in which the ACT Party representative has framed it is trying to compare it to Farm Act drugs. I mean, if we're going down this regressive argument line, and that's what we're using to articulate why we should and shouldn't spend money on things, then we're just in a losing battle, because government is always about and/or. It's never and in how you spend.
Auckland FC and Tottenham, they have billionaire owners. Why should we pitch in, Tracey Martin?
Well, probably because they won't come otherwise, because billionaire owners want to make money, I would imagine. Look, this fund, a major events fund's been around since 2004. This is not a new fund. It might have a new name. And I tell you what, if they called it regional development, it wouldn't be a problem for the ACT Party, right? So ultimately, it's the name that they have a problem with. But, then it's the same argument that councils have about libraries. We have to have things that create income or create, or support the citizenry, and they cost money. So would I like $40 million to go to aged care? Sure, but they're a different budget line. So It's a silly argument to say switch it to Farm Act.
What do you think, Jonathan?
I think it's fantastic for middle-aged white blokes like myself, because the kind of music that Louise Upson seems to be choosing is the kind of music that suits my demographic. Don't know if anyone else likes it.
Go Robbie, hey? Is it a slush fund, or is it actually you put a bit of money in and you can get a lot of money out?
I've said this before. I'd love to see us investing in New Zealand arts and music and theatre in the same way that we're investing in bringing out very well-paid overseas acts. I do think it's slightly ironic, though, that the ACT spokesperson who's complaining about that admitted that he'd once been to see a musical. He couldn't think of the names of any New Zealand authors or books.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. All right, so no problems having Lincoln Park, Robbie Williams and Tottenham Hotspur paid for by the taxpayer, Holly Bennett.
Well, that's probably a little bit of a miscontextualisation of what I was trying to articulate. However, I would say this. $40 million is just a tiny little drop.
And they're not fully funded by the New Zealand taxpayer.
No.
They're supported by.
Yes, indeed. All right, now finally on the show, just for a little bit of local politics, because this guy, we're talking about this on the panel, and it was in the news today. So should the mayor get the best office in the building? Wellington City Council moved offices. The mayor's offices has had quite the downgrade. They're on level 1, the exec's level 10. Level 1, no views, the view of a wall. Level 10, the most beautiful views in the country. So they've gone from harbour views to a measly car park out the window. So around the panel, Tracey, I wanted to know what you think of this. I mean, is it an example of a culture issue at the council or not really?
I haven't the faintest idea, but I think it's bad decision making. The office of the mayor is something that holds a certain mana, and actually, Andrew Little's right. He has overseas visitors, he represents his city, and so on and so forth. And they're going to put him in an office that has a wall as the view. I think they've made a mistake.
What do you think, Jonathan? You do have huge dignitaries from across the world. They'll be coming to the mayor's office. Imagine if you showed them the jewel that is Poneke.
Have you been into Wayne Brown's office in Auckland?
No.
It is spectacular. You can stand in the middle of the room and turn around pretty much 360-degree views, right from the Waitakere Ranges, right around over the Harbour Bridge, and looking up north and around to the islands and out to Coromandel. Absolutely beautiful. That's what you want to show off to your visiting dignitaries. But I would say that Wellington is different. Because what we saw last week is that, frankly, panes of glass and windows can be a bit of a liability in Wellington at present. In some ways, you want to be bunkered down in a concrete bunker down there. So,
I'm kind of feeling quite jealous about Wayne Brown's office, quite frankly.
I heard you grumping about this.
Given the box that I've been in for my career. Holly Bennett, what do you think about this? The wider issue of to what do we accord a mayor, actually, of the capital?
Oh, to be able to have this level of issues, that's what you're worried about. Genuinely, I just find this disgraceful from everyone, from the exec to local politicians, the fact that we're even talking about it. There's businesses out there who can't even pay their rent right now, their leases. I mean, I'm over it. Move on.
So get what you're given and be happy with it.
Quite frankly.
Okay. Very good. And let's leave it at that then. Very good. Hey, what a fantastic panel. It is Holly Bennett and we've got Jonathan Milne, Tracey Martin. A crack of a show. Great feedback tonight. Thank you all for coming. Kia ora to you. I'm Wallace Chapman. A big thanks to my producers, Tessa Guest and Jose Barbeau. So stick around because we've got the news and then we've got a Meal Donovan just after 8.